Chinese Coast Guard fires water cannons at Philippine vessels, the latest in Beijing's aggressive actions in the West Philippine Sea. Amid tensions with China, the Philippines and the United States are expected to conduct joint patrols in the disputed waters. And a vigil led by Pope Francis draws over 1 million pilgrims during the Global Catholic Youth Festival in Libson, Portugal. Fast, focused, and fearless. Here's a roundup of stories we're watching now. I'm Riza Diaz. We begin the newscast with the growing condemnation of China's latest case of apparent harassment in the West Philippine Sea. The incident involved the Philippine supply vessels that were seen being water cannoned by the Chinese Coast Guard in Ayungin Shoal on Saturday. The Coast Guard and the armed forces have since condemned the attack, describing it as dangerous, excessive, and offensive. Some lawmakers hit out at China, with Senate President Mig Zubiri saying that the incident reaffirms the merit of a recently adopted Senate resolution, which calls on the government to intensify its efforts in asserting the country's sovereignty. Now, Zubiri added that such acts by China have no place in a civilized order. Senator Risa Ontiveros, who earlier proposed to raise China's aggression before the United Nations, also condemned the incident. She said China has no right to block our supply vessels and called for joint patrols in the West Philippine Sea with other countries. Meanwhile, the Australian embassy described China's actions as dangerous and destabilizing and reiterated its call for peace in the region. Now, for the U.S., an armed attack on Philippine flag vessels would invoke Washington's mutual defense commitments with Manila. The Philippines is set to conduct the joint patrol operations with the United States in the West Philippine Sea. The Philippine star-coated National Security Council Assistant Director General Jonathan Malaya saying that some logistical issues are still being ironed out. Malaya, though, added that the two countries are looking to launch the joint patrols in the disputed waters before end of the year. Recall that in February, a U.S. Navy chief expressed Washington's commitment for such efforts to strengthen military alliances across the region. Now, to share with us his thoughts about the recent developments in the West Philippine Sea, we have with us One News defense analyst, Mr. Manny Mogato. Manny, good afternoon.
Hi, good afternoon, yes.
Manny, would like to know your thoughts. What are the implications of this recent incident in the West Philippine Sea in the Ayungin Shoal? Parang napapadalas to.
Yeah, I think this is an escalation of what is happening in the South China Sea. Remember that in June, Chinese boats blocked two Philippine Coast Guard vessels, also in Ayungin. There was a near collision when a Chinese vessel cut across the path of the Philippine Coast Guard. But at that time, two wooden boats were able to deliver food, fuel, and water and other supplies to BRP Sierra Madre. What happened last Saturday in the water cannon incident, one of the boats did not fail to deliver supplies to our soldiers stationed at BRP Sierra Madre.
Manny, would you say could be a possible response of China with that resolution of the Senate to conduct joint patrols in the disputed waters with the United States?
It is indeed a reaction by China to what the senators did last week, passing a resolution condemning the Chinese coercive activities in the South China Sea. For them, the Senate resolution was another red line that the Philippines crossed. Remember that in 2013, we brought a complaint before the Permanent Arbitration Committee in The Hague. So this is another effort by the Philippines to raise what that China is doing in the South China Sea. And for them, they do not like what's happening, and it's a red line for them.
Manny, very recently, former President Duterte visited China, and then this happened. Does those two connect, or wala bang epekto yung naging bisita ni President Duterte or former President Duterte?
Well, apparently, wala nangyari doon sa ginagawa ni former President Duterte in China, because for China, they are asserting their claims on the South China Sea. So whatever former President Duterte did in Beijing, in meeting with President Xi Jinping, did not help.
I see. Okay, Manny, the U.S. or the United States said it may invoke its mutual defense commitments with the country. Does this count qualify to that? And what could this possibly mean?
I'm not sure if the U.S. can invoke the Mutual Defense Treaty, because it is clear that the treaty can be invoked if there is an attack on a public vessel of the Philippines in the West Philippine Sea. However, the boat that was used by the Philippines was a private vessel instead of a public vessel which is a Coast Guard or a Philippine Navy ship. So I'm not sure if that will count.
I see. So, to be more specific, on a Philippine flagged vessel, yun.
Philippine public vessel. It's a government vessel. This one is still it is still a Philippine registered vessel, but it is a private vessel.
Understood. Okay. So, what should the Marcos administration do at this point?
Well, for the Marcos administration, what it should do is it continue to assert our sovereign rights in the area. Ayungin Shoal, sorry, Ayungin Shoal is well within the 200 nautical mile exclusive economic zone. So China has no business in blocking or in preventing our vessel in supplying our troops in the area. So we should continue to assert our own sovereign rights in that area.
Oh, Manny, Senator Rizzo Ontiveros was proposing that we raise this issue to the United Nations. Do you think it's high time to do that?
It is a step in the right direction, because China has been avoiding to internationalize this issue. During the Duterte administration, China was able to negotiate our territorial claims bilaterally. But in the past 6 years, nothing has happened. There was no agreement on whatever that would reduce the tension in the area. So the only way is to internationalize and approach the problem to a multilateral approach. So the Senate resolution raising the issue to the international community is a step in the right direction. We might not win in the first attempt, but we should remember that if we keep on pushing, in the end, we might win. Like what Nicaragua did when it had the dispute with the U.S. In its waters.
Here's to hoping that they would finally listen. Thank you, Manny. That's all the time that we have. And thank you for sharing with us your insights and your time. That's One News defense analyst, Mr. Manny Mogato. Thank you. Now we'll be back with more stories after the break. Keep it here on One News. watching One News Now. I'm Riza Diaz. The Palarong Pambansa 2023 wrapped up on Saturday after a week of inter-regional school games. The 63rd Palarong Pambansa was held in Marikina City with over 9,000 participating athletes and coaches across the country. Exciting dances and colorful outfits from each region were showcased in the closing ceremony. The program concluded with the extinguishing of the Cauldron Fire. Now, next year's Palarong Pambansa will be held in Cebu City, while Ilocos Norte will host the 2025 Games. NCR kept the overall championship title for this year with 85 gold medals. In second place is Western Visayas with 60 gold medals, followed by Calabarzon with 52 gold medals. Now, in her closing speech, Vice President and DepEd Secretary Sara Duterte said this reminder for the student athletes.
Lagi ko pong sinasabi na ang mga paligsahan ay para po sa mga nanalo at natalo, dahil lalong-lalo na sa mga natalo, dahil marami kayong matututunan at yung lahat ng inyong karanasan sa pakikipagpaligsahan sa palaro ay makakatulong sa inyo. Filipino spirit in the sportsmanship and to the rest of the world.
About 1.5 million people in Portugal braved through the scorching sun for a vigil led by Pope Francis. The Riverside Park had no too little shade or structures, but people still gathered, with some arriving 8 hours early. In his short, improvised but impassioned address to the crowd, the Pope gave a reminder to look for life's meaning and to walk in hope. The vigil is part of World Youth Day festivities, which is a week of religious, cultural, and festive events held every 3 years. And those are the top stories of the hour. I'm Riza Diaz. We are One News.